It is the Trends, Neil Atkinson with Josh Williams. It's a show in 3 parts. We're going to talk about Southampton for Liverpool in the first part. Second part, we're going to talk about away wins, of which there was many this weekend, and the weekend's not over at the time of recording. We don't know how West Ham have got on at Newcastle, as they haven't sacked Lopetegui. I'm going to say they've got beat, but I could be wrong, and I could be, Lopetegui could be having a right go at me tomorrow. You can take my comments and pin them to the dressing room wall if he wants. And we're going to have a chat about Arsenal and City and where they sort of find themselves at this moment in time. Just a couple of observations, no more, no less, Josh. I want to start off with the race chart, though, Southampton versus Liverpool, because I love a race chart that just tells the story, and this is a really good example of one. So effectively, yellow line's Liverpool, red line's Southampton, and you can see Liverpool's yellow line is going up in small increments as Liverpool are having some half-decent opportunities, and finally they make it 1-0. Then you've got the reality, which is that Liverpool then don't manage to have another shot at 1-0 all the way through to when Southampton make it 1-1. Liverpool start to have a little look, then Southampton make it 2-1, and then Southampton don't have another shot for 35 minutes, and Liverpool have a number of opportunities or create half-decent opportunities, and it goes from there. It is, I think, just a decent depiction, therefore, of quite literally how the game unfolded. Yeah,
it's funny as well, because most of the jumps in the race map are kind of individual letters, just gifts, basically. Liverpool's gift there, given to them by McCarthy, and then is Howard Bellis with the clearance, the really bad clearance. And then Van Dijk's kind of gift with Robertson giving away a penalty and things. So it was a weird game, and it wasn't particularly tactically interesting. I felt it was just one of them stupid games where, I mean, it wasn't first against 20th, was it? No. It didn't feel like that in any way, shape or form.
It felt there was a lot of weather. Yeah. The whole thing felt like weather was a part of it, if you see what I mean, the winds, but also just in general, the rain, and it genuinely, remind me of a couple of games from recent seasons. Actually, they're both from the same season, now I stopped to think about it, but there's the 3-2 defeat against West Ham in 21-22, Liverpool's first defeat of that season, and that mad 3-3 against Brentford. In Brentford's first season when they got promoted. It had really strong Brentford really strong Brentford 3-3 energy, I thought. And I always thought we were going to win the game, and it didn't feel that Southampton didn't quite have that remaining second half gear that Brentford team had, or that West Ham team. I think you could see on 65-70 they had no out ball. They had the race was run, I thought, on 65-70 in a way that those other two teams have referred to it in those games. That wasn't the case. But all of that said, you've still got to do the business, and Liverpool did.
Yeah, I agree. I think around the 70th minute or so, I did feel, I never really felt in too much trouble. Even when Liverpool went a goal down, I was obviously very annoyed, but I never really felt like we were going to come out there with anything less than 3 points. Maybe that's the faith I've got in Liverpool, the lack of faith I've got in Southampton. I think they've had a few games where they've had the lead maybe late on, and they've conceded, and it's shot themselves in the foot, basically. We know they're capable of doing that, and they ended up doing that, by the way, giving away a penalty. And McCarthy comes out and tries to smother Salah, and Salah just taps it in with his first touch. So it was a weird team to face, but if you're going to play like that in any game where you're not particularly on it, do it against the worst team in the league.
Indeed. They may not be the worst team in the league.
Up there.
No, exactly. They're one of the bottom 6. Yeah. There's a very clear bottom 6, I think that's fair to say. Yeah. Then there's West Ham, then there's everyone else. And West Ham can fix that situation if they do the decent thing on Lopetegui. Anyway, we find ourselves... The Southampton pass network's not actually much use, because one of the things you actually get to see is, he flips the fullbacks. So because of that, where they are doesn't really tell you a great deal. Lallana goes off early, that doesn't tell you a great deal. The fact that you get to see Onuachu be so deep, I think, is instructive, at least in one sense, but
he also goes off as well.
Sorry?
He also goes off early.
He also goes off early as well. The Liverpool one, though, is, I'm struck by how much Jones did pull to the left. Like Liverpool had seen something in particular that they wanted to have a little look at. Nunez is an island, and he did feel like an island during the game. Felt like he was working really hard, but ultimately just could not really build a relationship with anyone around him, and Liverpool couldn't get him into the game. It did feel like Szoboszlai was sort of playing through the middle of the pitch, and again sort of getting to see that is there in crystal clear. And I thought Robertson did all of his best work in the game where he is on this pass map, if you see what I mean. I thought he was really useful in the final third, but sort of a couple of concerns or questions about him going the other way.
Yeah, going into it, I felt like it might have been a bit of a Klopp game where we put an emphasis on their build-up game and we try and press them into the ground and get chances through that. And I think the midfield selection maybe depicts that, dropping McAllister, who maybe hasn't got the legs of a Szoboszlai and McAllister.
And the international duty.
And the international duty, of course, yeah. So, but it didn't really play out like that. It played out like Liverpool dominating the ball for the most part. and we can see that there in the size of the bubbles and that.
Yeah, you can indeed. Just the shot map's interesting. You'll notice that, you know, you end up in an expected goals as 0.95, but it doesn't include the penalty, but they missed the penalty anyway. The rebound is in there, obviously. I think if you take the penalty out, Slot's very happy with that. I think he would not be ideal that there's at least one other attempt that they score from by the penalty spot. But if you take the penalty and the rebound out, I think you deal on that away from home against the bottom 10 team.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the worst, like, and the penalty is kind of a one-off incident, as I go back to what I said before about the shooting yourself in the foot type thing. Yeah,
but I don't think you'll like this. This is Liverpool's shot map through the game, and yes, there is the penalty in there as well. Obviously, Salah's one is a bit of an oddity because the nature of how he takes it, taking it that early and all of that, so it doesn't look like it's remarkably high value. It's worth saying, if he takes another touch, keeps moving with the ball, it becomes a higher value chance. This is, you know, on a game-by-game basis, the expected goals can sort of cheat you a little bit, but I don't think Liverpool want that many block shots.
No.
I don't think Liverpool wants that much blue around the makeup of the thing. That's not what Liverpool have been about under Slot, and to me it was striking actually how often Liverpool opportunities were being blocked. We've got to acknowledge it ends up being a very deep, low block from Southampton.
Yeah.
But I don't think Slot likes that.
No, I agree with you. I think based on what I saw, it was 27 shots for Liverpool. That's a high for Liverpool under Slot.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you could look at it and go, right, that's a good thing. But I think under Slot we've seen a bit more of a quality over quantity vibe, and that looks a little bit for me like a little bit like last season, where we're creating loads, but it's a bit messy all in the process. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, the XG. I mean, the XG per shot is 0.06. That's doesn't include the penalty, but that's not what Liverpool wants.
No.
And that's not what they've wanted all season under this manager. I'm just a little bit. We're going to come on and talk about the away results over the course of the weekend. Like I think the impact that these international breaks actually have on not even necessarily the rhythm of the player in terms of their own personal fitness, but just them being used to teammates and being used to the manager asking, and the knock-on effect it has around preparation. I think it could be more significant now than ever. It is a striking pattern, isn't it, all the way through the season. Liverpool get beat by Forest, are all right against Chelsea, but they're nothing to write home about. And now there's this one against Southampton. And even the first half against Ipswich, if you want to include that with it being the first game, I think there is, when Liverpool haven't been together for an extended period of time, I don't think they play particularly well. Yeah, I think you're not in that flow really either. And I was actually going to tweet, I think at half time, this feels like a very first game back after international break type vibe, but I opted against tweeting it because I couldn't be bothered with, everyone was moaning and that's all. But as always, but it did feel like that kind of game though. It did indeed. Last little thing is Southampton's pressures, where you'd expect, because Liverpool had them penned in for much of the game back there. This is Liverpool's full pressure map. Keep your eye on the stuff around the number 9 position, because that is Liverpool's pressure map. If you only look at Szoboszlai and Nunez, supplying an enormous proportion of Liverpool's pressures, the two of them, really significant in there, Josh. And I think, again, I'm frustrated a little bit with Nunez. I've sort of eased just a little towards being a bit frustrated, because I just want more stuff around ironically, it's the very stuff, I want more shots. It's the stuff he's always had. I want more penalty spot stuff, I want more 6-yard box stuff, I want more between the sticks, and I think at some point that's got to come. I think we can keep saying it's going to come. I think he's not being helped at times by his teammates. All of that said, what isn't stopping is the work ethic. Is not stopping from him. He put it in all game again, I thought, in this one, and I'd love to have both. Yeah. I suspected the minute the manager, all right, just having one, but I'd love to have both. Well, I think what's interesting is, from Slot's perspective, he must have a bit of an insight into why it stopped, because before he comes in, he takes more shots per 90 than anyone in Europe. Yeah, which is some going. Considering you've got the likes of Harry Kane out there, you've got Kylian Mbappe out there, so for him to go from that largely uninvolved and more of a defensive presence for the team, where he's pressing opponents into the ground but not getting any shots, not providing much of a threat, that's quite a switch. So I would like to know why that's happened, and no one yet really has asked Slot about the product of Nunez yet, and what have you done there, and that sort of thing. So it'd be interesting to see where we're going with that. It will indeed. That is us for part 1, going through Southampton against Liverpool. It was one of them to be got out of the way, and let's have a conversation about what it means after the international breaks. Back in a second. Everything the Anfield Wrap does this week is free. Every show, audio or video, we are putting out so you can get a good taste of the flavour of the Anfield Wrap as this season heats up. Obviously we're doing that because we want you to subscribe, so if you've done that in the past and you're thinking about coming back to us, then now will be a great time. And if you have never done it before, then also think about it now as well. We're approaching December, it's the crunch time of the campaign. It is the Anfield Wrap, therefore your pre-match, during the match, post-match, we've got you covered. Enjoy the week. Welcome back, Neil Atkinson and Josh Williams. Those of you who've been listening to this show for a while, / just putting up with me, will be aware of the fact that I'm very much on the hobby horse of away games at the minute in the Premier League are exceptionally difficult. There appears to be one exception for that, the game after the international break. So far this season, 5 out of the 9, not this season, sorry, this weekend, 5 out of the 9 away games were won now. There's a little bit of variance here. It's worth saying that Liverpool win away from home, they're against 20th. Chelsea win away from home, they're against a Leicester City side that are struggling in there as well. But the others are actually a little bit like, well, all right. So Brighton win at Bournemouth. It's not the maddest result in the world, but it's worth saying that Bournemouth have had some decent results at home recently against City and Arsenal. Yeah. Wolves win against Fulham and Tottenham win against Manchester City. It's 5 away wins. Now, Josh, we're all about trends. Last time there was 5 away wins in one game week was the international break of the game that started the international break after October. So there you can see Manchester City win at Wolves. Again, nothing mad. Villa win at Fulham, Brighton win at Newcastle, Leicester win at Southampton and Everton win at Ipswich. All relatively straightforward there. Arsenal fail to win at Bournemouth after that one. Last time there was 5 away wins in the Premier League, all in the same weekend, was after the September international break. Arsenal won, Newcastle won, Manchester United won against Tottenham, Wolves and Southampton respectively. And again, there's a little bit there in the nature of who's playing who. But Nottingham Forest won against Liverpool and Chelsea nicked one against Bournemouth.
Weird.
It is weird, but I think where it ends up, and I'm going to go through the race charts for these games in a minute, I think one of the things that you end up with is I think games are just a little bit more uncontrolled by the home team. I think if you think about that, and also by the team that you'd expect to hold more control as well at times, like we've just discussed us against Southampton, so we win that game, but I think if that game comes in the middle of a run, Liverpool's performance, I think, is more mature, more controlled, more we know where we're up to. I think there's a little bit of a thing where sides have lost the way in which they want to impose the way they play at home, if that makes sense. That's the loss of rhythm that's happened, and it just makes the games a teeny bit more of a lottery. Wolves versus Newcastle was one where Wolves were the better team for a while, but Newcastle had a long range effort. I remember that one.
I remember that one, yeah.
Liverpool weren't very good against Nottingham Forest, for instance. In that one, Tottenham couldn't get going against Arsenal, and there was a lot of people, it was doing people's heads in watching it, and Arsenal had their really good, one of their best sort of low block style performances. Yeah. But the flip side of this, you've just seen Tottenham be able to pull Man City apart and pull teams apart at times. I just think there's a thing where, in terms of constructive, controlled play, sides just maybe aren't establishing themselves, having not had the time together.
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to what we said in part 1 about that flow, that rhythm. Klopp used to talk about rhythm all the time when he was at Liverpool, and goes back to when certain players come back from injuries and things like that. You need that rhythm to play, and as you say, international football is very different. The managers are different, the playing styles are often different, so it takes a bit of time to get going, and that's visualised in the result there.
Well, I know it's visualised in this first race map. I want to go through Bournemouth versus Brighton. We've looked at Liverpool and Liverpool going to Southampton. What's dead interesting about this one is, Bournemouth, they're getting there. In the end, they ended up with 1.46 expected goals. They played for half an hour against Brighton. And there's a bit of game state thing where Brighton get 2 goals and they score in the early parts of both halves. That's no bad thing. It knocks Bournemouth off. But what you can sort of see there, I think, is that, it's not like Brighton are having to hang on for dear life. It's like there's no pattern of play from Bournemouth. It's until after the 60th minute that they go past 0.5 expected goals in a home game, and that's not normally what you see from Bournemouth. No,
it is interesting. Obviously, there's a red card in there as well, which is the side of things. But for Brighton to just kind of jump, there's only 2 major jumps there, really, isn't there? And beyond that, there's not a lot going on for Brighton. There's just creating 2 clear-cut chances and getting the win through it. So it's interesting how it works out.
Yeah, Fulham versus Wolves is one where Fulham get the early goal, have a really good chance, and then get the goal. It's not the same passage of play. There is a little bit of a break between the two. And this one just looks like pure variance. I think Wolves have been on the flip side of variance so far this season. And this is one where Wolves end up with the game state suiting them, with Cunha playing well, and all of a sudden they just cruise themselves to a 4-1. But again, I think Fulham before the game, 1.09 against Wolves, especially in a game where you are chasing it a little bit. I think if you are Fulham, you probably do want a bit more than that.
Yeah. I mean, beyond that big jump at the very, very beginning of the game, there's not a lot beyond that, is there, at all, really. And Cunha does have a belter in this game. You know, there's a few great goals in there where Wolves are just finishing the chances to a high level, and they haven't been doing that this season, so yeah, it's one of them.
Bit of variance that works for them. I think Leicester City Chelsea is just a pretty straightforward top four side comes up against bottom four sides and looks better. Leicester never really get themselves going. It's a late penalty that bumps their expected goals up. And then you get Man City versus Tottenham. It's a game I'm sure we all watched or had an eye on. It's worth pointing out that it's the second consecutive game where Manchester City have raced into pretty strong expected goals territory in terms of what they're creating quite early. The approaching 0.75 after 30 minutes in this one. It's just that Tottenham have taken a couple of chances that they're 2-0 up and Manchester City aren't. But what's striking is how many little jumps there are for Manchester City in this race chart.
Yeah.
And that would be the thing that would be troubling me, and I think you saw the same thing in the second half against Brighton after Brighton went 2-1. Brighton were just repeatedly big jumps, and Manchester City were just tiny little increments, and there's very few actual quality chances that City are creating here against Tottenham.
Well, the thing is with City, they've got issues at both ends. Like if you look at that race map there, in addition to creating lots of like low quality shots with their own race map, if you look at Spurs as well, Spurs obviously they're providing a consistent threat throughout the game. End up giving away about 1.2 expected goals before the final goal. I think that's Brennan Johnson scoring with a big jump at the end. But you don't tend to win titles giving away 1.2 expected goals per match. That's just too much. And City are doing it every single week now. They did it against Sporting. Sporting gave about 2.3, I think, something like that. Who else was there around that time?
Well, there's Brighton, where Brighton are just creating quality chances.
Yeah, and he was a game
over and
before
over
that.
again. Yeah, no, I think it's in there all the way through at the minute for Manchester City. I think it's definitely one to watch, and there's more on that to come in a second or two. The quality of opportunities they're giving up and how close opponents are actually getting to their goal before they take a shot. That's coming up in part 3. This is the trends. Keep your eye on those away games. Let's see if it reverts back to normal next week.
It's John Givens from the Anfield Wrap with a quick interjection to let you know a little bit more about a fantastic offer at the moment at Anfield with LFC Tours. Now, if you've not been to the Anfield on a non-match day for a while, you've not done one of the stadium tours for a while, or you don't know about the full range of activities they have at the moment, then this is a fantastic opportunity to have a look into it and also save yourself some money, because there's loads going on a non-match day. There's the classic stadium tour, of course, that is always being developed, and that includes the newly designed LFC Museum, which is absolutely brilliant. You can even abseil from Anfield if you want at the moment, and there's Legends, Q&As and ultimate Anfield experiences as well. And until December the 2nd, you can get money off, and it's a really good discount as well. It's 30% off the classic stadium tour. That includes the museum as well, with the code Black Friday 30. So that is Black Friday 30 when you're booking. You can either book a particular date, or you can get a gift voucher from that as well, and you get 30% off. Or if you want to do something a little bit more special, there is the Legends Q&As. So after the stadium tour, you'll hear from a legend who's played and won trophies, I'm sure, for Liverpool Football Club, just to hear a little bit more from them and maybe a chance to ask a question there yourself as well. Or there's the Anfield experience, or the ultimate LFC experience as well. They are really special. I've been lucky enough to go on one of those, and it makes you feel like an absolute VIP and maybe a Liverpool player yourself. Or also there's the Anfield abseil, so if you're brave and you want to tackle that, there is that as well. So if you can see yourself abseiling from the top of the main stand, why not get stuck in? Because at the moment you've got 20% off all of those with the code Black Friday 20. Like I said before, you can book for a specific date, or you can get a gift voucher for yourself or a family member for Christmas as well. So get ahead for Christmas with LFC Tours. If you're interested in finding out more about those experiences, or you want to book, you just need to go to lfc.tv/tours. That's lfc.tv/tours and get stuck in.
Welcome back, part 3 of the trends, where we're going to just catch up a little bit with Arsenal and then sort of have a look at both Arsenal and Manchester City. I think the thing that will be the most pleasing for Mikel Arteta in the result against Nottingham Forest at the Emirates is just how little Nottingham Forest were reduced to in terms of creation there. We can see it at 0.36. Arsenal are whacking in good shots from distance, so the scoreboard helps Arsenal, it undermines Forest, but the truth of it is, that's precisely what Arteta wants.
Yeah,
every time he plays at home.
I think Arteta will just be made up that it was a relatively normal week. Where they keep a clean sheet, they go ahead, they keep the lead, nobody gets injured, nobody gets sent off. And I was quite impressed actually, because I thought it would be a trickier game. Looking at Forest recently, Forest have took a few scalps so far this season, including Liverpool. So I thought it would be a bit more problematic for them than it was. But looking at City and looking at Arsenal, maybe it's recency bias from me, but I think Arsenal could, by Christmas, New Year, could be more in touch with Liverpool than City are, the way it's going, which is interesting.
It is interesting. The one thing to point out here with Arsenal, this is the game by game, so the purple lines, the XG they've been conceding, the green lines, what they've been creating, is that it's their best performance since the game against Leicester earlier in the campaign. So it coming right now, I think, will bode well for them. The other good one on the purple line there is from the first game of the season against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Forest next, because Forest actually, if you look at them against Newcastle, they end up with only 0.59 expected goals created before the international break. Newcastle ended up feeling they were quite dominant in that game. The other interesting thing is the Forest opener comes from a set piece. It's Murillo who scores it. They actually haven't managed to have a shot before then, Forest. I do wonder if there's a little bit, maybe, if I say the race is run, it would act as though I'm acting like, they're now going to be dreadful. But I do wonder whether or not, we've seen this in the past with Nuno's teams, there's a point where the early season momentum does begin to dissipate. There's also just a point where people have got the video, they've watched it loads and loads, and they begin to work out, well, if we stop this and stop this, then we can stop them from playing. Yeah,
well, going into the Arsenal game, I think they dropped Chris Wood to the bench, and they do similar to what they did against Liverpool, I felt, in terms of playing on the break and things like that. But Arteta will have been able to plan for that. He will have been able to watch the Liverpool game and think, right, this is what's going on. And I think you're right, I think there's elements of that in there. And what their biggest strength in the season was not giving away much on the defensive end. That's creeping up a little bit now. So, and with the game maybe 3 days going into Christmas, you might find it a little bit trickier.
You might find it a little bit trickier indeed. So, don't be too taken by the Arsenal result in that one, but it is obviously worth saying that they'll be very, very pleased. The XG difference inclusive, we've had our eye on over the course of the season. Liverpool now strongest where that's concerned, not too far behind Manchester City, then Tottenham. Arsenal still a little bit of a way off, but there's been those issues around the red cards and game state stuff that's impacted them. Fulham still sort of bouncing around in fourth place on this metric. Then Chelsea and Villa in there as well. I think it's most useful for looking at the other end of the table, to be honest with you, Josh, at this point. The poorest sides are the ones who are at the bottom: Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester, Wolves, West Ham, and then you've got Everton and Crystal Palace. They're the ones who are sort of, we expect them to be down there, or they've been down there. Maybe a couple of them might hit a bit of resurgency, but they're the ones who are, that tells us why they are where they are.
Yeah, the thing is with Arsenal as well, it doesn't really paint a true picture of Arsenal, does it? Because of the red cards that they've had in certain games in the second half against Manchester City, where they faced like 30 shots or whatever it was. So it's gathering a bit of accuracy though, isn't it? It's getting to a point where it's representing the league in a proper way.
What's most interesting is where Brighton are. Brighton at the minute aren't great in this, but it's worth saying they've played everybody now. Brighton's run of games, the next 6 are eminently winnable. They're not going to play anyone who I think you'd expect to finish in the top 8. They've got all of those games out the way. They played Tottenham, they played Liverpool, they played Manchester City, they played Arsenal, they played Chelsea as well. So they've really played, and now they play Bournemouth too, who do well in this sort of thing. They played the sides of the top half of the table and ended up where they've ended up. I think they played United as well, insofar as that matters. What's really interesting from the City point of view, we looked before about that Tottenham result, is they are by some distance, and it's a trappy little metric, XG per shot, because it's all in the detail. It's very granular where it gets down to, but they are 0.14 XG per shot conceded, which is just substantially worse than everybody else. Josh, I think that's the best way to sort of see it. I think this visualisation, where you get to see the full bar chart, it is the most useful. Nottingham Forest, who you said before have been good at keeping people away from their own goal, they're performing best. Then Arsenal, then Liverpool, then Chelsea. City are by some distance the worst.
Yeah, and I think it goes with the eye test. I think that's what we've been seeing. They don't face many shots at all. In fact, I think they're down on about 7.5 shots faced per match, which is up there with a typical title win for City. Yeah. I think the problem is when the shots do come, they're basically tap-ins. You've got to look at Maddison's goals on the weekend. Bodes well for Liverpool as well moving forward, because we've got them next. And if you're not particularly inclined to create quantity, but you are creating quality, that's what you can do against City. So,
yeah, but he's going to have a plan for us, isn't he?
Yeah, of course, but the thing is with City, Guardiola always tends to play in a relatively similar way in terms of an approach stylistically, not necessarily in terms of formations, but you know they're going to have the ball. They're not going to relinquish possession. It's just not in his nature. So we'll be able to get them on a break and hopefully get one or two opportunities where it just happens, like Spurs did.
Yeah, so there's been people saying a bit of it reminds people of 22-23 with Liverpool. I had a look at that metric on 22-23 and you can see that Liverpool are out there again, markedly the worst. Everyone else, it's all little increments going all the way down, XG per shot conceded. Liverpool well out there, 22-23. Not quite as bad as City now, but approaching 0.12. What's interesting, the City were third worst for this last year on this metric, so they're the third poorest. Arsenal were the best. Liverpool were about average, but they were the third worst for it last season, City. And that feels like a little bit of a surprise on the eye test. But then if we imagine quite possibly what's happening to City now, that it isn't an overnight thing, that it is maybe a little bit of a direction of travel, then that does make at least a modicum of sense. That last season may not have been, there might have been a couple of little issues that people were able to gloss over because they won and because they kept winning. But that maybe something was about to turn if it is indeed relatively permanent, which I don't think we quite can say for certain yet.
Yeah, well, if you look at that, it's basically that minus Rodri, and with everyone getting a little bit older, and the product has been maybe facing a XG per shot about 0.03 worse than last season. So I think that goes in line with it, and as you say, with the metric, it's quite a sticky metric in it, but 0.03 is a lot when it comes to an average shot that you face. So
if it goes up by that much, then you're gonna really feel it.
Yeah, you are gonna feel it. Yeah,
and to your point, especially if you don't concede that many shots. Okay, last one is opposition shot distance, and this is something else that will be hugely concerning. The average is about 15.7 metres from goal. City's is the worst in the league at the minute. It's about 13.7. Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, and Chelsea doing the best on this one. I think this is another key part of the problem. I'm shocked by how often I'm seeing, you think about where João Pedro gets his shot off from, how often you're seeing players just be really, really close to the Manchester City goal when they get to have shots.
Well, Adama Traore had a few of them, they were 1v1s, literally 1v1s with Ederson, and it's a real problem for them. And I think this kind of cliche line that a lot of pundits are using, that City always come good in the second half of the season, don't worry about them, that type of thing. I think that is a bit naive this season. I honestly don't think this is the worst City team I've seen since his first season in charge. Obviously, we're only about 12 games in, something like that, isn't it? But I don't think this is one of them where this is going to go away overnight or something like that. I think this might be a bit of certainly a problem until the next window maybe, and depending on what they do in that window. But I don't think this is going to be one of them seasons for City where they maybe just come good in the next half of the season. I think they might find it trickier this time. Obviously, they will to a certain extent, but not to the extent where they can win 20 in a row. You know what I mean?
That for me, this is where the 22-23 Liverpool comparison, I think there is some validity to it. My reason why is more, there's various bits of flirting with not doing something for an extended period that Liverpool were doing up until 22-23, where a lot of people said you'll always get punished for that event. Well, said year in, year out you're going to get punished for that. And the City supporters have been saying year in, year out we need to be better and more dynamic in the market. There's a number of them who've been saying it, and they've been proven wrong. They were proven wrong most emphatically in the treble season. They were proven wrong last season, but they'll now be able to say, well, no, I've been saying this, and there we go. And that's that little bit of the Liverpool 22-23 comparison, where you can go, well, I've been saying this for ages. The flip side of that, though, is that, well, Liverpool were doing really, really well, and it's difficult, therefore, to sort of to draw the line on that. This is back to my line that all plots lead deathward. If you keep saying the same thing, you'll be right eventually.
Yeah.
But that again, that's another comparison where I think this is a little bit of a thing for the City side, where at the minute I think it's a bit of a turning point this next week for them, the game against us and then the games that they have the other side of that. Because listen, I think if they can't rouse themselves at Anfield to put a performance in that really backs themselves up, backs the manager up, it's the ultimate place for them, I think, to show what they're made of, to show steel is Anfield. If they can't do it at Anfield, then I do sort of begin to go, oh right, okay, this all feels a bit 1990, 1991 Liverpool, where you can still put performances in, you can still be great for 20 minutes, you can still blow a team away, but you just might not be able to all rouse yourselves to do it for 90 minutes, then another 90 in 3 days, then another 90 in 3 days, and I wonder if that's what's on the horizon.
Well, it is worth saying that, they've won 4 Premier Leagues in a row, so, every team gets to a point where they kind of maybe lose a little bit of that spark, and I think the attack will not necessarily come good, but I think they've been unlucky with the attack a little bit lately. Haaland hasn't been finishing his chances to the same level as he was before. I think defensively is the concern I would have if I was Guardiola. They are giving away too much. It's just too much to win a league. It's too much to consistently challenge at the top of the league, to be honest. I think they're only about 1 or 2 points ahead of fourth now in the Champions League places. So it'll be interesting to see how we resolve this, because Liverpool in that season where we struggled, we did go in the market and we identified Gakpo as a potential solution because we weren't getting Firmino on the pitch as much. We signed Gakpo playing as a false nine. I think that'll solve things by blocking the centre, but it didn't. The eventual solution to it was inverting Trent and going with that box midfield, and then we started winning games then. So it'll be interesting to see if Guardiola thinks it's a transfer market thing or a tactical thing, but so far his tactics aren't working. He was using Kyle Walker and Joshua Guardiola as just holding up with against Spurs and he get done.
There we are. Thank you very much to Josh. That's been the Trends.